man, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you, man. Oh, dude, I tell you, I was thinking the other day how crazy it was that I was cruising around looking for plugins and I came across your plugin and I was like looking at videos and stuff, and then your email pops up and I'm like, this is scary. I mean,
Yeah, it's
that
crazy
is
the way the universe works sometimes.
that is so bizarre, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, I imagine that things have been pretty crazy for you. Uh, you're probably extremely busy, so I'm really, really grateful for you to come
Dude,
on
no,
and
thank
chat,
you for
man.
having me, man. With the Gia stuff, it's like it's like starting something from the ground up again. So, like, I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time and giving these in-depth reviews. It's really, really cool, man.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, I've been watching your stuff for a while.
Oh, dude, that I mean that blows me away. So I've been so enjoying your stuff in
Thank you, man.
Gia, and I was already a fan of intervals, but you will get into talking about Gia
Yeah, for sure.
in a little bit. But I kind of
Sure.
wanted to roll back and get a little bit of a foundation, like where you grew up and how you came into music and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Long Island.
Hmm.
I live in Brooklyn, so I haven't really moved too far. But I
Hmm.
grew up in Long Island, and both I had pretty musical parents. Like music was always around. My none of them. I mean, my dad doesn't really do it for a profession at all. He
Hmm.
hasn't played, but my dad's a drummer, and my mom is a singer.
Wow.
And So I think they actually met in a band.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool. But so my dad's like super into Rush, Yes, who else? Yeah, Rush, Yes, Zeppelin. So all that stuff was, and we had like a big CD rack above
Yeah.
the TV when growing up.
Yeah.
And so it was always around, they were and my mom like 27 years ago worked at this small record label or something like that.
Wow.
And I think they handled John Anderson's like solo stuff
Oh
maybe.
my gosh.
So
Wow.
so yeah, so she became friendly with like John Anderson. So my mom and my
Oh,
dad like have met him. Yeah, it was crazy. So
oh my
I
God.
so that was all around. So I was really fortunate in that regard to where like I was just immediately surrounded by good music and just coincidentally progressive music or
Yeah.
or not
Yeah.
coincidentally but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And um my parents always say that there's like two moments where they knew I was gonna do the music thing. One
Wow.
was when I was like, I think I might have been 2 or 3. Elvis was on the TV, and like he was, I think it was just Blue Suede Shoes or something, or Jailhouse Rock or something.
Yeah.
And then there's a picture of me just like on the floor, just at the TV, just like you know. and um and then I think like a year or two later, same thing happened, but with Kiss, with Gene Simmons.
Dude, you're a Kiss fan. You're a
Yeah,
Kiss fan.
man. Yeah,
I was
loud
a
and proud.
hardcore Kiss fan too, man.
Yeah, dude, like hardcore. So
Oh,
I think it started with them buying me like
wow.
Fisher Price guitars and everything like that,
Yeah.
and then when I was 7, they got me my first acoustic guitar,
Oh.
and I took lessons with this guy for like less than a year,
Mm.
and I thought, because I just wanted to be like Gene Simmons, I didn't care what he was doing, I didn't know what he was playing, but
That's awesome, dude.
yeah, because he was so cool. Like when I'm a big fan of like horror movie. Like now that I think about like
Yeah.
what drew me to him, like I'm a huge fan of horror movies.
Yeah.
I love like
Oh,
superheroes.
God.
I'm into metal, so that was just
Wow.
kind of like he was like the culmination of all the things that I like
Yeah.
enjoy or wanted to do.
Yeah.
But then so I was 7. I was
So
taking
I
guitar.
got to interrupt you for a
Yeah,
second
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. Go.
what's so mind blowing about this, which cracks me up, is because thinking about that your early influence was Gene Simmons, and to know how you play today, if Gene Simmons got to sit down and watch you play, I mean, he would just absolutely lose it. I mean, that's what cracks
Ah,
me up is that standing on the shoulders of greatness. Anyway,
yeah.
just continue on, continue on.
No, I love. There's things I can talk about with Gene's playing and his baseline composition that I
Mm.
actually can, draw parallels to what I do.
Oh,
But we
wow.
could, but
I'd love to hear because he's the walking bass king, but go ahead.
Yes, he does the walking bass thing, but he'll do these things where he'll, like in their song Parasite. I don't know if you know the song Parasite.
I know
Yeah.
all their songs,
Okay,
dude.
great. So that riff,
Yeah.
like he'll do that thing where he plays in the same register as the guitars, and
Yeah.
then right before the verse hits, he'll go to the lower octave, it's just like a soup. It's I do it all the time, and
Oh,
I that
wow.
yeah. So it's just like one of those things where it's like, people say all these things about Gene Simmons, like whatever say what we want about his character or who he is.
Right.
But like as the guy, like I genuinely wouldn't be doing the thing if it wasn't for me watching Kiss
Dude.
on TV. So I got to give
Oh,
credit where it's due.
I'm so glad.
But
I'm so glad that you said that about him because, he's kind of known for being a salesman, a marketer,
right,
a
right,
pitch man. I mean, this is kind of how people see him now. But I hear what you're saying because, there has to be something in the music to have gotten me interested in them in
yeah,
those early days too,
hmm
because he wasn't all about that back then. He was just
hmm
about, being the demon and,
hmm
being this killer
he's a
low.
kid. Yeah,
Yeah, the low end
yeah,
guy in the band. And,
yeah,
and he did do some pretty, uh, thoughtful playing in that group,
right.
you know?
He served the music
Yeah.
so well.
Yeah.
But that yeah, so that's my Gene Simmons appreciation rant. But yeah, so when I was like 7 and I was playing, my teacher was, showing me like House of the Rising Sun and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I found out Gene Simmons was a bass player. I didn't know that. I didn't know
Oh,
what
yeah.
bass was, but
Wow.
my dad told me, "Oh, Gene Simmons plays bass." I'm like, well, "Why did you buy me a guitar?" He goes, and I could just see in his face. He was like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna have to buy this kid another instrument."
Oh my
So
gosh.
he said, "Jake, if you stick with the guitar for a full year, we'll get you a bass."
Wow.
So I did it, or no, I wore him down after like 8 months, I think.
Yeah, you don't
And
want
he
to
bought
wait.
me, yeah, and he bought me this little like Gretsch Les Paul
Oh, wow.
starter bass, and when he bought the bass, I'll always remember the guy who sold it to us at Guitar Center. He asked me because I was so young. He's like, "What music do you like?" I'm like, "I really like Kiss." And then
Yeah,
he started playing like Detroit Rock City on bass, and I was like, "Oh,
that's
that's
it.
it. That's the thing I want to
That's
do."
it. Oh my
Um,
God.
so I
Wh-
started playing bass.
What was your
Oh, go ahead.
first
Sorry.
bass? What did you get?
Yeah, it was a Gretsch Les Paul bass.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, very very different from that, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
but
You've
yeah.
come a
So
long way,
yeah,
Jacob.
a string or two,
Right.
Um, but
So you got
so
your bass.
I got my
Uh,
bass, and my teacher was like, I think he had a conversation with my dad where he's like, "Hey, there's just so much I can like show him on this thing.
wow.
You might want to look for another
Yeah.
teacher."
Mm.
So my uncle, my dad, I call him my uncle. He's my dad's friend from college,
Mhm.
but he works on like a lot of jazz festivals in Long Beach, Long Island, and just all over the world now. But um, my dad, we are big King Crimson fans,
Oh,
and we love
yeah.
the Chapman stick too.
Yeah.
So he was telling me about this, telling my dad like, "Hey, you should go see this. You should take Jake to see this Chapman
Yeah.
stick player." It wasn't
Yeah.
Tony Levin, but it was another bald Chapman stick player, which was really funny. Yeah, and so we went and we met the guy. I forgot what his name was, but my dad was talking to him, and he was like, "My son is a bass player. He's just starting out, but he's I think he's wants to be serious about it. Like I think he's showing a lot of interest. Do
Mhm.
you have any teachers that you
Mhm.
could recommend in Long Island?" And he recommended this guy who his name is Mike Frost, and I studied with
Mhm.
him from when I was around 8 to like 18. And
Wow.
yeah, I owe a lot to that guy. So the way he would structure our lessons would be like, I was 8 at the time, so
Yeah.
I had the attention span of like a goldfish. So
Right.
we would
Wow.
I'd say like, "Hey, I want to learn Holiday by Green Day." And he goes,
Mhm.
"Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to show you how to play blue bossa, and I'm going to give you," he would, give me like 12 bar blues or like some other stuff. And then the last 20 minutes, we listened to Holiday, and he would show me that.
Smart
And
man. He
that's,
gave you
yeah,
vegetables
yeah,
before
exactly.
the dessert. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there was a lot of that. And through working with him, I got into Jocko and Victor
Wow.
and Stanley, and just this is like years and years and years going by.
Yeah.
And it got to the point, where I got good, And I liked the technical stuff, you know. I was, you
Mm.
know, the Kiss thing was kind of, I was moving past it a little bit.
Right, right.
And I was gravitating more towards like the heavy stuff. Like even with Kiss, like I liked songs like God of Thunder, Unholy, Parasite,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
I gravitated towards and then I joined this other band with like a bunch of 18-year-olds. I was 11, and this
Oh,
guitar player, yeah, yeah, it was fun. It was the whole thing. I got kicked out because I couldn't get into bars. But
Did
their
you
guitar player,
did you ride your scooter to
yeah,
rehearsal?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a little razor. But so their rhythm guitar player though showed up, and he tuned the low string on his guitar down to drop D, which I didn't know what that was, but he started
Mhm.
playing Beast and a Harlot by Avenged Sevenfold.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I heard that, and I was like, what is that? What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's way
Low.
cool. That's way cooler than the poppy crap that we're playing right now. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And he goes, that's,
Oh my God.
and so he showed me Beast and the Harlot, and then from then on, you know, Avenged Sevenfold, like they're also one of my like, you know,
Mhm.
bands that
Yeah.
started it all for me. Like
Yeah.
Sinister Gates, one of my favorite, Johnny
Yeah.
Christ, one of my favorite bass players. So they're like the first heavy band that I got into, and I was thinking, okay, this is cool, and there's riffs, so it's technical. I like this, and then yeah, so that's kind of where things started to get closer to where they are now in terms of like the
Right.
music that I play. Yeah, so that was like I think maybe until I was like 13. So that kind of gives you the where it all kind of started type of thing, you know?
You're already getting some pretty intense experience at
Mhm.
such an incredibly young age. I mean, that
Yeah.
you're in a band and you're going out and doing live gigs with this group.
Yeah, I was. I was my first show, it like traumatized me because I thought it went really well. And I played fine, but I was standing there like I looked like John Entwistle. I was just like standing there just like this. And
Yeah.
the rest of the band's rocking out, but I'm just like this 11-year-old in my cargo shorts and like it's like and I had no idea I looked like that. So
Uh-huh.
that was something that changed. Like one show I was told my family was like, you did fine, but you look so stiff up there. And I
Your
was like,
statue.
oh,
Yeah.
well, that's never gonna happen again.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Oh my
yeah, but
gosh.
yeah, so I've been playing live since I could, you know, since
So
I
yeah,
yeah.
so you're doing so now, okay, so at this point, how old are you when you're
I think I
uh
was like when I think I was like 12 or 13.
12 or 13, and so now you're rolling into high school
Yeah.
years. Now,
Hmm.
at this point, you must have been known at your school or in the area that you were this competent musician. And as you get into high school, I know bands are forming because
Hmm.
you're in high school looking for girlfriends and all this kind of stuff, forming bands and
Yeah.
doing all this, or you're partying or whatever. But the bands pop up a lot, when you're in high school. So what
Yeah.
was it like? Were you um, did you have a lot of opportunities? Were you sought after? I mean, I would imagine that you were
So
in high school.
I in high school, like I didn't really go to a my high school had a great music program, but there was no one that was really trying to do the thing that I wanted to do. I was in a band with these
Oh,
two kids in middle school, and we were doing like Rage Against the Machine covers and a couple originals. But
okay. Yeah.
I started getting into stuff like Dream Theater and Between the Buried and Me, and also this heavier stuff, and that was not really,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and
Well, and who could
then
play it besides you in high school, though? I mean,
there I don't know, there were kids, but they just didn't go to my school. So I met this guitar
oh,
player. Yeah, I met this guitar player who lived in the town over,
yeah.
and he really got me into like Between the Buried and Me and like the Dream Theater stuff.
Mm.
And we were jamming, and then I forgot what happened. He might have moved, or like he something happened where that didn't work out. And I was like, oh, this was so sick. Like finally someone I could like jam with, and it didn't work out. And I was just like,
Oh,
I was asking my dad like, what should I do? I want to find a band.
yeah.
And I went on Craigslist.
Oh,
I was like, at this time I was like 15, and I went on Craigslist and I saw an ad for this progressive metal band in Amityville. Um, and they were all in their like early 20s to like late 20s, and I
wow.
was 15 or 16 again, but it's
Wow.
like a situation that I was kind of in when I was 11. um and I emailed them, and I just did a little recording to one of their songs, and I said, hey, this is what I can do, because I played I just sent them a little demo, and they were like, okay, you're very young, but come to the rehearsal space.
Wow.
So my dad drove me, and he stayed there because like he drove me to this,
Yeah, he's not gonna just
yeah,
drop you off.
yeah,
It's I'll
this
pick you up
industrial,
in 2 hours
yeah, exactly. So he drove
after.
me there.
Yeah.
He came in with me, and I auditioned, and I got the gig. And
Wow.
so this was the first time where I was playing with these guys who, they were playing Dream Theater. They liked Yes, they
Mm.
liked Between the Buried and Me, and then through their guitar player, um, who I also owe a lot to because he introduced me to so much more of the heavier like metalcore stuff.
Mm.
Like he showed me Periphery, Meshuggah,
Mhm.
Necrophagist, The
Oh yeah.
Faceless,
Woo.
and then that led
Oh
me to like,
yeah.
yeah,
Heavy. Good
yeah, and
stuff,
then that
man.
led me to like finding out what intervals was when I was in high school, because
Wow.
they formed when I was like my last year of high school, I think. So through that, that's kind of where I honed in on what exactly I wanted to do musically.
Were you a
So
fan of intervals? Like, were you listening to their music and you're
I I had I'd heard of it and I liked it. I think I
yeah.
heard Epiphany, which is a song
Hmm.
we play on every tour now, which is just so funny thinking about like
Yeah.
me being in like at my locker just like listening to that or
That's
something.
got to be mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It was definitely a cool thing. It's fine because I wasn't like a huge like
Right.
I love the music. I'm a
Yeah.
huge part of it, but it wasn't something where like when I was in high school, I knew every Between the Buried and Me song. I knew every
Right.
Periphery song.
Yeah.
You know,
It wasn't like it was Dream
but intervals,
Theater. It
yeah,
wasn't like
yeah,
you're taking John Young's place and
yeah. But
which have a bigger impact, but still cool.
right, it
Yeah.
was so yeah, it was so cool. And then when I got to Berklee, intervals was kind of started to pop off, and I started to see people in interval shirts, and I'm like, oh, and then I started listening to them more. So then I'd heard of them
Wow.
a bit more,
Wow.
and that yeah, then I can get into how I got into that situation, but yeah, so yeah, I was 16 in this band, and they kind of showed me a lot of the bands that I'm really into now, like Meshuggah, Necrophagist,
Do you
um,
remember what you auditioned with for that group?
yeah,
What you had to do?
yeah.
what was the tune that you worked on for that?
It was just one of their original tunes that I
Oh, it
just
was
had
one
to
of their songs. Okay.
yeah, I learned it by ear.
Wow.
I think I also might have had to play Limelight by Rush.
Rush.
Yeah.
Okay, they got to see if you got some chops here to play all
Yeah.
of
And the
Getty's.
song had like odd meters and all
Yeah.
this other stuff. So it was just, and I didn't know what that was. I was just kind of learning it all by ear and just being like, oh, that's weird. Why does this not finish? But whatever. Why does this bar not end? Or
Oh
why
my
does it end
gosh.
early? But but yeah, those guys were my introduction to like odd meters, like
Yeah.
all these bands I just mentioned.
Were you still on four string?
No, I was playing, I think, like an Ibanez SR5,
Five.
and yeah, so I was playing that, and I was playing I was also using my a Music Man 4 string, but
Okay.
that yeah,
Okay. Getting
but yeah,
comfortable, starting to branch out a little bit, getting that
yeah,
low end because now you're interested in the low end sound and you're like, okay,
yeah,
well I got to get another instrument
yeah. Well,
to
they had
get me
seven
down.
strings, so I had to keep up.
Oh my gosh, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Man. So what was Berkeley like? What was your experience with Berkeley attending there?
It was very humbling because when you go there, a
Oh
lot of the
man.
times you're the big fish in a small pond at home,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then I that was the case for me.
Yep.
Um, and I got there and everyone was just
Oh,
killing. It's just
shit.
stone cold. There was one moment like my first week that kind of like I don't know, it did a lot for me where I was in my friend's dorm and I was playing on bass that he had, and I was playing like Can't Hold No Groove by Victor Wooten. And I was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't who I was in terms of like technique wise, so I was just kind of like getting through it.
Yeah.
And then this guy who's a great guy, like I know him now, he's super cool, but it was both our first day at the school, and
Oh,
he like takes the bass and he starts playing it, and he's just
killing
stone
it.
cold killer,
Oh
killer.
my
And
God.
I'm just like, I'm like, dude, that's so cool, man. Like I'd love to hang sometime and like show you and like just like pick your brain about that stuff. And he
Yeah.
goes, I don't know, man, I just do it. And I'm like, oh, all right. And then in my head, I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna get really good at this, and anytime anyone wants to know how to do it, I'll be the first. Like, I'm not gonna gatekeep anything, you know.
That's awesome, dude.
But
That's
Berklee was
awesome.
great. I studied with, man, I studied with Victor Bailey from Weather
Oh,
Report. I got
man.
to study with Victor. I studied
Wow.
with,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it was amazing. Lincoln Goins, Whip Brown.
Mm.
Um, Victor Wooten was just always there too, which was
Hmm.
crazy. And like the biggest
Wow.
influence I think as a teacher was this guy named Anthony Vitti.
Mm.
He he's a big funk R&B guy.
Mm.
Like, he's just like a suburban Massachusetts version of Marcus Miller.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah,
That's interesting.
he's so good, and he's just like this down to earth dude. Just shows
Wow.
up in like a flannel and a Pat's shirt,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and just picks up his Fender and just starts ripping. And
Wow.
and I wanted to get better at slap, and
Mm.
I started working with him. I took a lab with him. It was a
Wow.
slap lab, and I was doing the flea thing, which is where
Hmm.
you hit like this as
Yep.
opposed to striking through.
Yeah.
And I got there, and he's like, "Okay, we need to redo your whole technique." And I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah." So that was something I did. Because slap is like a big part of my identity as a player. It's like what
Yep.
a lot of people know me to
Yep.
do. But yeah, I really didn't get good at it until I was in my 20s, I think.
Wow. So
Um,
now that you're slapping
Early
through,
20s. Yeah.
yeah. So
Sorry.
now that you're slapping through the note, um, are you doing the Victor Wooten thing and coming back up and all of that?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So with Anthony, we took this lab, and then I was like, I need to study with this guy privately. So as my private instructor, I worked with Anthony for a bunch of semesters, and it got to the point where, he would like, all I wanted to do was make this guy stoked on my playing. All I wanted to do was
Right.
show up prepared. He
Oh
was so brutally
yeah.
honest about my technique and like
Oh
pocket,
man.
and we never touched double thumb. We never did any crazy
Yeah.
party tricks. And then, but I had this solid foundation. And then from then on, I went to do the double thumbing. I just look
Yeah.
on the internet, like went to the internet,
Hmm.
because
Right.
Victor Wooten was always at our school, and he was putting on these clinics, but he really wouldn't talk about it that much.
Mm.
He's really into like this like kind of like philosophical way
Yeah.
of
Oh yeah. Totally.
teaching, which is amazing. But
Yeah.
in terms of just getting the technique down, there were some times when he would do clinics, and I'd just be like, "Oh man, just talk about what the thing
And he
is."
doesn't even bring his bass,
No,
right?
no.
He just he just shows
But
up and starts talking about the philosophy.
he's such a good guy. Like, I
He's a
did a
great
Berklee
teacher.
bass camp. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
But I went to the internet, and I just looked at guys like Victor and
Yeah.
Tosin
Yeah.
and Henrik from Dirty Loops,
Yep.
and I would just slow that stuff down,
Yeah.
and then at the end of my time at Berklee, I did like a final performance thing where I played some of my own stuff and played some other stuff. Um, and Anthony was the guy who was observing my final presentation thing,
Hmm.
and he was
Hmm.
like, "Man, like, where'd you learn all that stuff?" I'm like,
Oh,
"Nah, no, on the internet."
the
But like,
internet,
no, no,
not
but it's
from Berkeley, but
no,
from the
no, but like the
internet.
thing is, I had this amazing foundation, and like all the stuff I do now, like in terms of
Mhm.
slap, like, in terms of rhythmically, you can take, I guess some of it has to do with metal, but a lot of the techniques, and it's all derived from this like R&B, like the Marcus stuff, the Victor stuff.
Yeah.
It's all just applied to metal, but none of what I learned, none of that stuff it didn't really come from metal.
Yeah.
And that's why I
I
think,
mean,
yeah.
this is a thing about your playing that is so unique to me, and that I'm so glad to see a bass player like you playing in this genre because of the technique that you've employed in your playing,
Hmm.
that it doesn't matter where it came from.
Right.
It's just another tool in your arsenal that you get to use, and it's a different sound on the bass, and
Hmm.
that's what's so cool about it. And that's like getting back to talking about your plugin and what your plugin is able to do. You've got all those articulations at your fingertips. You could say, okay, I'm going to articulate the note this way or this way or this way, and there's a whole list of ways that you could hit that string that are all different. And that adds so much to the music, whether you're playing funk music or metal music or whatever. It's got a
Hmm.
whole nother, dimension to it. So when I first started seeing you play, with intervals, and you were doing
Mhm.
stuff that surprised me because I didn't expect to see the technique that you were doing in the context of that group. And I'm like, holy smokes, this guy is beyond metal. I mean, his ability is, I mean, this guy could play in a funk group, he could play in whatever group that he wants, you know, because of the
Mhm.
technique that you have.
Mhm.
That it's really impressive, man. And
Thank you.
I know you must spend so much time on that instrument to be able to get all of that technique. You must sleep with the bass because to get there, I don't know, man. I mean, how do you get there? I mean, geez.
um, a lot of so the pocket thing and just being able to like play in a band is you got to play live. You got to just get out and do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of these, kind of more advanced techniques
Yep.
that I'll do, I've just tried to come up with these almost just monotonous exercises that you can do when
Oh,
you're not thinking about it.
wow.
Whether I'll just put on like Netflix and I'll put on
Right.
and I'll just
Right.
like take the bass and I'll just like, just be watching the TV and I'll just go,
Wow.
and
Oh my God. Dude, that's freaking awesome.
but yeah, there's and yeah, so a lot of the crazier stuff is just been, it's the information's there for you. It's
Yeah.
just putting in the time because
Yeah.
it takes so much to get the mechanics down. The
Right.
concept is easy to understand. Boom,
Right.
boom, boom,
Yep.
boom,
Right.
or boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Anyone and their grandmother could do that.
Yeah.
But it's the time, and it's also having the patience and the understanding that just because you can double thumb this song doesn't
Right.
mean that you can double thumb everything,
Oh,
every
wow.
track, every
Yeah.
and yeah, I think also just with recording all the music I've recorded for different artists
Yeah.
and whether it's intervals or just any of the other people I've worked with, it's I'll sit down and write fills and I won't be able to practice, and just understanding that like, okay, I want to play this fill but I can't play it right now, so I gotta take it to the shed,
Right.
and in this day and age, I think everyone just it's just instant gratification. Everyone
Yeah.
wants that instant
Want it now.
gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think Berklee just instilled this sense of um just like patience and understanding
Right.
that it'll come if you put the work in. That was a big thing because a lot of the stuff I
Right.
did at Berklee, I did just behind the scenes. I wasn't a big, name at the school
Mm.
when I was there. But
So
yeah, so go back.
perseverance,
Yeah.
and knowing that you're not going to get it right away,
Yeah.
but you have to just keep plowing through it until you get there. So
Right.
you've had that experience of doing that with other things. So each time you learn a technique, you're like, okay, well, this is what it took to
Here we
get
go.
here. Here
Yeah.
we go again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the method is it's always almost always the same. Just start slow, focus on,
Yeah.
focus on getting the mechanics right. Don't try. I forgot who said it. I think it might have been Jeff Loomis,
Hmm.
but there's a quote that he said. I think it was him. I think he said, "Don't try to get too good too fast,"
Wow. That's
which
good.
which I like because you know, if you rush through these things,
Yeah.
you can maybe kind of half-ass your way through it, and someone at Guitar Center might turn their head when you play the guitar. But if you go into the studio and you're really zooming in on it,
Yep.
it's gonna sound like crap.
Yeah. When the red
Um,
light turns on,
yeah, exactly.
and then
So
you got to be able to do it.
yeah,
Yeah. If you can't play it slow, you can't play it fast. I mean, that's,
right.
you know,
Yeah. So I'm
what
a
are
big.
some
Mhm.
what are some of the like more difficult things that come to mind for you, like technique wise? Like right now, what is something that is there something that you're
Mhm.
currently working on that is a technical thing that you're still trying to get through it?
Yeah, there is.
What is
It's
it?
it's three finger stuff. That's my
Really?
yeah. So a lot of the times when I thump, I play a majority of the interval stuff with my fingers, and I do a lot of slap too. But
Yeah.
um, these three finger exercise or these three finger groupings when you have to play like or something like that, I it's always been something that I've can do, but it's not something I'm asked to do that often. So
Mm,
it's something, we all have maybe holes in our playing or like
right,
gaps, and that's like a big
right.
gap for me is not doing the three finger thing, because a lot of the time I can sub it for the with the thumb,
You got other
Yeah,
ways
I
to
can just do
get
the
there.
machine gun thing with the
Dude,
thumping
can
thing.
can can you show us? The viewers would love to see what we're
Yeah.
talking about here. Can you show on
Yeah.
your base what you're
Yeah,
talking
give me one
about?
second, actually. I'll do you one better.
Oh yeah, plug
Um,
that baby in. I love your bass, dude.
yeah.
We'll talk about your bass in a little bit,
Yeah,
but oh
sure.
my God, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'll just dark glass thing to. Is that cool? Can you
Awesome.
hear that?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So yeah. So the thing I do a lot is
Wow. Woo.
right.
Oh my God.
So the thing that I'm working on is just the three finger thing,
Wow.
because it's
Wow.
something that with the new interval stuff, we
Wow.
it's heavier, and we're doing a
Yeah.
lot of these breakdown dun 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 dun, 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 dun,
Right.
dun, and that's just something that I can kind of do, but
Yeah.
I'm not nowhere near as proficient as I need to be at it.
So now you
Um,
played that open. I noticed that your strings were ringing. So would you also do that muting with your left hand to get it to do the three finger thing and muting with your left hand to get more
no,
staccato? But this is a
no. So
different thing.
so with
Yeah.
thumping, I'll get my bass again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the thumping thing, like
Yeah.
that's just part of the sound, and you can do like I just find like with a lot of the guitars that I play with, they're in sections like that, they're
Mm.
doing that like split coil thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just like the dull,
Right.
it just kind of lends itself
Real percussive.
better to
Yeah.
yeah. But with the three finger, that's just a
Meat.
straight up
That's some
yeah
heavy. Yeah. Right.
you know.
Wow.
Mm.
Um, yeah. You
So
watch a
that's something
few.
I gotta get better at.
Yeah, watch some Matteo Mancuso videos.
Dude, yeah. I'm so curious if what he does would translate to bigger strings.
I wonder. I mean, I really wonder because boy, what he's able to do with his fingers like that. Because as soon as you said it, it reminded me of him
Dude.
because I just saw an example of him using
Hmm.
the three finger technique to play Eruption in the that one
Hmm.
part at the end,
Yep.
and I was like, holy crap, man! And it sounds the way Eddie would play with a pick. I mean, the way he articulates it, it's just
Hmm.
brrrr, and it's so
Yeah.
even,
I
so
that is
even. I mean,
it's
that's
a scientific anomaly, that
crazy.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, man. That's man, that's crazy.